Ethics in a world that suffers. Let me ask you something, and I want you to sit with this question, not rush past it. Why does existence hurt so much? Not sometimes, not occasionally, but structurally, pain is not an accident of life. It is built into the system. And once you truly accept that, ethics stops being about happiness, success, or meaning. It becomes about something much more basic: reducing suffering. This narration is not motivational. It is not spiritual. It does not promise hope. It is an attempt to be honest. 1. Material reality and the illusion of the self. Let us begin with what we are. We are not souls. We are not divine sparks. We are not metaphysical entities passing through bodies. We are matter. Atoms. Every living being, human or animal, is made of atoms borrowed from the environment. And every day, without us noticing, those atoms leave, and new ones arrive. The body you inhabit today is not the same body you inhabited 10 years ago. Yet you still say, "This is me." This creates a paradox that philosophers have discussed for centuries. The ship of Theseus. If every part of a ship is replaced over time, is it still the same ship? And if your atoms are replaced, who exactly are you? The answer is uncomfortable but clear. You are not your atoms. You are the pattern they form. You are your values, your memories, your behavioral tendencies. Atoms are interchangeable. Values are not. And here comes the ethical weight of this realization. Those same atoms that were once part of a revolutionary fighting slavery, or resisting casteism, or standing against sexism, today may be part of a body that does not suffer those injustices. Not because karma exists, but because matter circulates, atoms flow. And when atoms become part of a sentient structure, they gain the capacity to suffer, which means every atom that participates in consciousness carries moral risk. 2. Consciousness as an accident of arrangement. Consciousness is not magic. It is not sacred. It is an emergent property. When atoms bond in a certain configuration, they produce awareness, pain, fear, desire, hope. And when that configuration dissolves, consciousness disappears. The atoms do not suffer. Only the arrangement does. This leads to a cold but unavoidable conclusion. Suffering exists only where consciousness exists. And therefore, ethics must focus on consciousness, not on abstract ideas of life being holy. Life itself is neutral. Suffering is not. 3. Why suffering matters more than pleasure. Most moral systems try to maximize happiness. But happiness is fragile. It adapts. It fades. It demands escalation. Suffering is different. Suffering captures the mind completely. A starving person does not philosophize about purpose. A tortured animal does not contemplate joy. Suffering is invasive. Pleasure is optional. This is why negative utilitarianism argues something radical but logical. Reducing suffering is more important than increasing happiness, not because happiness is bad, but because suffering dominates experience. This is not pessimism, it is prioritization. 4. Maslow's hierarchy and a forgotten truth. There is a reason Maslow placed basic needs at the bottom, because without them, nothing else works. There is no motivation that heals starvation. There is no philosophy that cures thirst. There is no spirituality that replaces safety. Needs are not psychological preferences. They are biological imperatives. And here, the law of diminishing marginal utility becomes important. Once a basic need is fulfilled, further addition does not bring lasting happiness. Instead, the mind starts craving the next level. This is why people who are materially comfortable still feel empty. They are trying to solve higher-level needs, using lower-level tools, and deprivation works both ways. Long-term deprivation destabilizes the mind, but fulfilling a need with poison, with addiction, exploitation, or denial of others' needs, also creates instability. Balance is not optional. It is biological. Number 5. Toxic optimism. Hope as a trap. Modern society worships optimism. Everything happens for a reason. Tomorrow will be better. Just stay positive. But optimism becomes toxic when it ignores irreversible suffering. Sometimes, tomorrow does not get better. Sometimes, the body does not heal. Sometimes, the mind does not recover. And yet, people are forced to continue, not because they want to live, but because society is uncomfortable with death. Here is the brutal observation. Either you die young, or you live long enough to beg for death and not get it. False hope can prolong suffering more effectively than cruelty. 6. Euthanasia and the ethics of mercy. This brings us to euthanasia, not as an emotional argument, not as a slogan, but as a moral question. If suffering becomes permanent, if healing becomes impossible, if consciousness is reduced to a container of pain, then what exactly is being preserved? Life or suffering? Negative utilitarianism asks something radical. Is the absence of suffering sometimes more valuable than the presence of life? This is not a celebration of death. It is a refusal to romanticize pain. Consent matters deeply in ethics. But when consciousness itself is damaged, when decision-making capacity is gone, ethics enters a tragic gray zone. This is not about convenience. It is about mercy. 7. Wildlife suffering and the brutality of nature. Nature is not kind. Nature is not balanced. Nature is not moral. Nature is blind. Predation, starvation, disease, parasitism. Animals suffer continuously, not because of evil, but because evolution optimizes survival, not well-being. Animals cannot become negative utilitarians. They cannot step outside evolutionary programming. They cannot decide to reduce future suffering. Which leads some philosophers to a disturbing theoretical conclusion. If suffering reduction is the highest moral value, then uncontrolled wildlife systems are morally problematic. Here, extinction is discussed only as a philosophical endpoint, a thought experiment, not an action plan. It asks, is a world with no suffering morally preferable to a world filled with unavoidable pain? This question is meant to disturb, not to instruct. 8. Farm animals, designed suffering. Wildlife suffering is accidental. Farm animal suffering is engineered. Industrial farming is suffering optimized for efficiency. Animals are bred to suffer faster, confined tighter, killed younger. This is not survival. This is design. Here, veganism is not purity. It is harm reduction, not perfection, but damage control. 9. Procreation, a conditional ethics. This philosophy does not say, never reproduce. It says, justify reproduction. Creating a conscious being is creating a suffering-capable entity. Therefore, procreation is justified only when it strengthens anti-suffering values. It is necessary to protect compassion. Existing humans are insufficient to build humane systems. If suffering can be reduced without creating new sufferers, then procreation loses its moral necessity. Numbers do not matter. Values do. 10. Human existence and moral debt. Here is the most uncomfortable truth. Human existence is not neutral. We consume resources. We compete. We displace others. In that sense, unintentionally, we behave like parasites on this planet. This is not self-hatred. It is realism. And realism leads to responsibility. If existence causes harm, then existence demands justification, not through guilt. Through contribution, you are not born to dominate. You are not entitled to consume endlessly. You are here, and therefore morally bound to reduce the suffering you inevitably cause. Conclusion. Cold logic, honest compassion. This philosophy is not hopeful, but it is sincere. It does not promise meaning. It offers responsibility. It does not glorify life. It respects consciousness. And it asks one final question. If your existence creates suffering, what are you doing to reduce it? Because in a world that hurts by default, compassion is not optional. It is the minimum ethical requirement. For every breath you take,